G'day everyone, welcome to BB and Budgie's Thursday Night Recce. Minus BB tonight, just Budgie, but I do have a special guest with me, as you can see on screen. Chris Grant, man affectionately dubbed Google Grant. I think he's had various other nicknames essentially along those lines over the years. An integral part of the sport and a man that has given an awful lot to rallying. Chris, thanks for your time, mate. Let's just start with the nicknames, because I think there's been a few of them over the years, all along the lines of you being essentially a walking encyclopedia when it comes to rallying. How does that sort of sit with you?
Oh, quite enamoured, to be honest. The Google Grant one was a Simon Bell introduction, I gather, once he became more directly involved with the NZRC and Rally New Zealand. But predating that is actually somebody that you, I think, have a pretty close affinity with, Ian Heppenstall. And Hep, when he was the media boss at Rally New Zealand, decided that my appropriate nickname was RBOL, RBOL, and that stood for Rally Bible on Legs. So that's where that one came from, and that sort of stuck until Simon came along, and I think I've even got a cup or something that's decorated up with RBOL on the side of it. And so that's really sort of the nicknames that I've had, and as long as you don't call me late for breakfast, I'll be more than happy to. You can call me whatever you like, to be honest. I just love doing what I'm doing. There's no doubt I will repeat several times during this podcast.
Where did you get the appetite, I guess, for this wealth of knowledge when it comes to the sport? Like what is it that sits with you? Are you one of those train spotting nerds, I guess, in the most affectionate way I can think of, about other things, or is it just rallying?
No, particularly rallying. I do like golf. I sort of have an interest in that. My brother is actually a golf referee and a course analyzer down in the Waikato. He goes around doing the slope system, evaluating courses for the slope system. So Ian is he's probably as passionate about golf as I am rallying, to be quite honest. So I guess it runs in the family from that standpoint. But no, to be honest, it goes back to, what would it be now? 1975, I would suggest. Brother Ian had a white MGB, a Roadster, and I got a British Racing Green one, and we joined the MG Car Club, is where it all started. And I can remember associating with the likes of Paul Walbrand, who's done some rallying, and Joseph B., for those of you that do remember that, and with his sons now. And the lasting memory I have is 1975, Rally New Zealand started from the Auckland Showgrounds. And we went there, and the star attraction was an Australian guy, Evan Green, who had an Alfetta GT, would you believe? And that was green, coincidentally. And Paul and I and his brother-in-law, Evan, and a couple of others hived off down into the Marangarua Forest as the rally left Auckland, middle of the night sort of stuff, and watched these cars thundering through the forest. And we just lost Bob Pierce, one of our wonderful, back in the day, New Zealand Herald reporters. And he has apparently much the same recollection of what he enjoyed so much, and what got him addicted was the nighttime viewing of cars, the noise coming through the forest, BDAs, of course, but also the Millen RX3s and the like, the rotary engines, and the fun was, who is it this time, sort of stuff that's going to be appearing, because obviously you didn't really recognise it because you got blinded by the lights as they flashed past. But it was just really trying to recognise tail lights as much as anything, to be quite honest. But that was the first thing really that sort of sparked the interest, going to the showground, seeing all these lovely liveried up cars, and then from there they went down south in '76 with the Snowbound Rally that Andrew Cowan won the heatway in the Mini with Jim Scott co-driving. And I can still remember actually going down the southern motorway towards Papakura and looking across and into the opposite lane. And there was this, I can't remember what the tow vehicle was, but there was this vehicle coming back, and it had a Skoda on the back of it with no rear wheels. And of course, in those days, if you made a mistake and you were out of the rally, you came off, or you had an incident, you were out of the rally. There was no super rallying back in those days, or rejoining capability. And it was Maury Chandler's Skoda. But where basically what had happened was he'd smacked the back end, and because it's rear-engined, I think he broke the distributor or something fairly innocuous that could have been replaced. But it was a terminal injury for the car, and that was him done and dusted. And I would have to say that would probably be one of the very few retirements that Maury had in all the Rally New Zealand he did before he became our wonderful clerk of the course and organiser of Rally New Zealand, mentor to so many of us of my generation. and now, of course, his grandchildren and the like, who are Josh Keeley and those sort of, and Amy and the like. And yeah, so again, it was just one of those quirky little things that you remember, and that before the Alzheimer's and dementia sets in, you sort of remember these instances and things that you've seen. So the next instance, from my point of view, of course, that because it was so snowbound, that it was a real challenge for the drivers down south, and so many of the guys slipped off the road. And as I've just mentioned, the little Mini sort of drove the steady course all the way through, and Andrew Cowan and Jim Scott won. So that was sort of against all odds. And then in '77, we had even more instance of that with the fabulous 𝙈𝙍𝙁 and the wonderful Massport Escort team. And for those of you that are our viewers of Facebook, and that sort of Jim Donald, who was the number 2 driver. In fact, he was the mechanic in the team in that particular event, and salvage as much as he could of 𝙈𝙍𝙁's car to keep it in the rally against the might of the works Fiats. Jim Donald is currently posting stuff on Facebook, some great photos of that event and Ari's car. They ran out of tail lights, and they just kept on rebuilding that car no matter what the flying fin did to it. And of course, one of the famous comics now is every night Jim Scott, at the end of every division, Jim Scott would ring his wife to reassure her that he was still alive, that he'd survived another day. And the other lasting memory I have of that is the fabulous Brian Kelly, who has been such a firm stalwart like Bob Pearce, but in audio form on radio, standing at the end of 100-odd K stage way over on the East Coast. And Vartanen started 4th car on the road, but behind the 3 Fiats. And he hunted them all down in that stage, and he came out of the stage first.
Wow.
And the famous quote from Vartanen was, "Whatever happens from now on, I can die happy." The fact that he caught and passed all the Fiats in that stage. So if you need further evidence of just what it is that's so addictive about this sport, mate, that just typifies it. And when the financial troubles sort of hit the Wellington-based organisation that ran that edition of the Rally of the South Pacific is actually what it was called. It wasn't called Rally New Zealand. The Radio New Zealand, Budgie, that would register with you as well. It was the primary sponsor. Hence BK, Ian Woodley, Rob Crabtree, and all those guys were out in force on the rally, doing those nightly reports that we all sort of sat back and hovered by the radio to hear the 9 or 10
Brian Kelly,
end of day report sort of stuff. You know, it was fabulous. And
so it's not just, I'll jump in, mate. 1978, I think you were telling me, was the first event that you worked on. Just like, I think I've known you 25 odd years. I don't really know how you got into working in the sport. I don't think I've ever heard the story. Can you give us an explanation of how you got from being rally fan to where you are now?
Heavily addicted and involved organising. Yes, exactly. Well, it came about through a motorsport conference, actually, that 1977. It was 77 or maybe 78, probably 78. It was held in Auckland, and I was there as an observer for the MG Car Club with the delegates and the rest of people attending. And as it turned out, Paul Mallard's grandfather, Eric, who a lot of us will remember with fond affection, was there. And he was a strong part of NZIGP, the Grand Prix Association. And I think through Maury, Willard, and that organisation, they effectively took over they created, I think, the Rally Organisers Association of New Zealand. And they basically took up the reins to organise Rally New Zealand as such from the Wellington consortium that had been running it previously. And basically, Eric was going around the people that were there, asking for expressions of interest of the local car clubs. Would anybody be interested in helping out organise the 1978 version, which is where the fabulous name Motorguard came from, part of a 5-year deal with Motor Specialties that was put together. And the Motorguard Rally 78 ultimately wasn't World Rally Championship, but probably because of the feedback Fiat gave the FI, or FISA as it was in those days, the sporting arm of the FIA at that time. And so I got on board and put my hand up, and as it worked out, I was actually out in the field, would you believe? Chris Grant out on a rally. That's a sort of pretty amazing. And I put my hand up, and with another guy who I didn't know, I met basically on the morning of the event. He and I were charged with the responsibility of running the Parc Fermes to make sure they were set up wherever required on the route as we travelled down from Auckland to Wellington. And
now, am I right in thinking that responsibility even involved you having to get the keys of the cars?
Yep. Sure was. We had the key box. It was a white wooden box, a narrow one, which opened out, had all the hooks on it with the car numbers, and it was our responsibility to be standing there at the control, booking the cars in, but also once they'd parked, taking the keys off the drivers. And putting them in the box, and woe betide you when you left the scene of the park firma. If you lost that bloody box overnight, mate, it would have been hell to pay. So so that definitely was, the story is true from that point of view. There was this very vital piece of equipment that we were charged, a bit like the Ranfurly motorsport version of Ranfurly Shield, mate, I guess you could say.
Yeah. Mate, we'll come back to some of your rallying prowess, because I know that you've competed. We'll come back to that in a minute. But
ignominiously.
Talk me through the subsequent years from 1978 and getting involved with the park firma responsibilities to where it evolved over the years from an organising standpoint, media role that you've done such a sterling job for the sport over a long time, ramp duties. I think these are sort of pre-BB days. You were BB of yesteryear in that sense, to the radio reports and the other and behind the scenes stuff, and then into what we're more familiar with now, getting into the results side of things. How did that journey transpire?
Sure. Yeah. Well, the last year out in the field. Oh no, sorry. Yeah, the last year out in the field was actually 1980. The last time the Rally New Zealand went to South Island. Again, there's some great Facebook photos appearing now of the big Mercedes and the like when they launched into Rally New Zealand, got beaten by Timo Salinen's Datsun, actually, as it turned out. So that was a wonderful time traveling around the South Island. And that was really where my first introduction to Peter Farrell came from. He was our driver, and man, he was a driver, all right. It was a great time traveling around, starting in Nelson and finishing in Christchurch. In 81, we again, because of the Mercedes feedback situation, I guess we lost our WRC status. So 1981, with the rally, we ran out of Taupo. And I went into, I can't quite remember, I went into headquarters. And funnily enough, the way things worked out, working with the wonderful Graham Robertson, Robbo, that a lot of people would remember. In fact, he's going to be a steward, I noticed, at Hawke's Bay. So there's no stopping us old people when give us a chance. They finished up, something happened to the Arrowing party, or one of the vehicles or something or other, I finished up going out as very much secondary and support staff to Robbo and his fantastic colleague Brett Naraga. And we went out and did the arrowing in the forests around Taupo. And as the rally headed it all the way over to Gisborne and back that particular year. So I sort of was, again, just got another role to play. And then 82, the rally went, first time the Audis were here, I think, we went Auckland to Wellington with Nicola and all those guys. And the rally, of course, became Auckland and Rotorua based. And I got the chance at that point to join Grant Morrison. Again, another, unfortunately, late Grant Morrison, fabulous man, working in the media room. And headquarters became my base, effectively, for the next, right the way through to 2022, when we were at the Viaduct Event Centre. So I really sort of took that on, and man, there's some stories there. Deborah Brock, Crystal's mother, that you would know well. She was a Rothmans girl back in those days, and that's how she initially got involved. And Deborah and another young lady, suitably scantily clad, were charged with the responsibility of walking around the rally headquarters, which at those years in the Auckland base was the Auckland Airport Travelodge, with a carved wooden box full of Rothmans cigarettes, offering them to people. So try that nowadays, as far as sponsorship goes. The other thing I do fondly remember about Deborah, apart from being fabulous with all the work she did and as the secretary and admin and Rally New Zealand office at Northern Sports Car Club over the years, was back. It showed you how things have evolved. That for all the Rally New Zealands back in those days at the Airport Travelodge, Deborah would order in a pallet load of A4 copy paper.
Wow.
Because that was the way you communicated the results back in those days. And I virtually never really solidly or slept for any major duration at all during those events, the 4 or 5 days that they ran, because you were constantly on the go, basically producing results. And one of the extremely infuriating things you'd find is that you'd print off a set of results, and our mission statement, again, showing my age, for those that maybe remember that Korean war comedy called MASH, the medical centre, there was an administration character there called Radar. And his claim to fame basically was that he would give the answers before the questions were asked. And that's become my and Chris Parker's mission statement as far as Chrisport goes. We want everybody out there that's looking at the results to get it before, not have to wait to get it before they really need it. And that was the way we ran the media room. We always had paper copy results in those days sitting at the door where the security, only authorised people could come into the media centre. And we wanted to make sure the latest results were the first thing, apart from a greeting, was the first thing we handed to the incoming overseas media that were in attendance. But man, it drove me nuts whenever we'd print off a whole raft of results and then there'd be a change to a stage time. Oh, I tell you, doing entry lists, it's an absolute treat nowadays. I remember Val Martin, Willard's, late wife, she was a secretary of the meeting, and she would have to type out the entry list on a typewriter.
Oh,
or
and
onto a Gestetner stencil. And you find that something changes, you make a mistake, you can't just go in and do a little quick change on your laptop in those days. Start again. It was amazing. And if I may, just another quick example of the fabulousness of Grant Morrison. We had telex machines in the media centre, a bank of telex machines, and we had the media come in, and basically because of the time of day and their curfews for their overseas European media outlets, of course, was during the night. So Grant and I would generally be sitting there pounding. We'd get the stories from the journos so they could go to bed to be ready to head out to do their job the next day. And Grant particularly and I would basically type up, and they were. Do you remember them, Budgie? They were a tape.
Yeah, I've vaguely remember this.
And basically, it was like a massive bloody long punch card. Yeah. And you would have to sit and key the story. And okay, that doesn't sound too onerous, but you have somebody walk past and tread on the tape and rip it, back to square one again.
Yeah.
The other thing was,
thankfully it predates my career, but I recall as a kid seeing that stuff for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing, of course, try doing the German version.
Yeah.
So the only words you recognise were Volkswagen, Nikola, Roll, and the Fiat and Audi. That sort of stuff. It was so wonderful. We just lapped it up because our job, in our view, was to provide the best possible service to these people that had travelled halfway around the world to come and publicise and work on our event.
Yeah, absolutely.
First thing we would ever say to them when we first saw them in the days leading up to rally, thanks for coming. Okay, they're paid to do their job. It was like the drivers, but the payback for us, I can still remember being in Sky City back in the early 2000s in the days leading up, and Carlos Sainz, Marcus Gronholm, Peter Solberg walked into the media centre having just flown in, completely jet-lagged, hey, thanks for coming, and they remembered our names. Yeah, you think of all the people they've met over the years, so it was so heartening to think we had made an impression on them.
Definitely something that I think is, if you talk to anyone that's involved in rallying, the people involved in the sport are something that has sort of made it what it is.
Very much.
Same thing, spectating. You go along as a kid watching WRC Rally New Zealand, and when I started, it was in the days we started in Auckland and traversed to Rotorua for the night, and you'd have a couple of nights at Rotorua or whatever. You'd see the same spectators, and some of them were foreigners. You get these tourists that were coming over to support their driver, and like end up sharing biscuits and a cup of tea or whatever with these people. Like the people made it made it what it was. Like it's a fun sport. Who doesn't like watching rally cars going fast? But the people around it have kind of made the sport special.
Watching people do things that we know we have no chance of doing ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And getting away with it.
Yeah. Mate, you talk about wanting to give the best experience, and we probably take it for granted these days, Chrisport, and the role that it plays within the sport, but man, has that made a difference? If you go back to, you talk about an era preceding Chrisport and trying to get results and the challenges, I recall Rally Waitomo, and I think it was 2019, where the lead of the rally, it was the final stage, the lead of the rally in the final stage changed 2 or 3 times, and we were sitting with Chrisport trying to work out who was, 2 drivers were finished parked up at the end of the stage waiting to see who had won the rally, and at a day before Chrisport, that would have been near on impossible. But with the click of a button, just about results there, everyone understanding it, the whole community following it. Tell us how Chrisport came about and your involvement with it, mate. Like, because it's a misconception that Chris is named after. It's not named after you. It's named after.
No, certainly not.
Parker,
no.
But Tell
Yep.
us that story.
Absolutely. No, the wonderful Chris Parker. Absolutely. The way I sort of tend to describe it to people is I'm the Chris in Chrisport is Chris Parker, who is the very much the computer software developer guy. In fact, his major motorsport interest is supercars. Would you believe? And mine, of course, is obviously the rally side of things. So I like to think we very much complement each other, and that I can sort of see things on a site and think, oh, maybe that could be worthwhile sort of adding as a feature to Chrisport. I'll talk to him, and there's none of this going through the RMA to get stuff approved and signed off and all that sort of rubbish. Almost within hours, Chris is, if he's happy that we can look at doing that within hours. He's come back with what do you think of this sort of stuff? And he's effectively computerized it, for want of a better expression. So just very quickly, the upshot of my getting involved in it, as I think mid-90s, there was when I was in the media, had been in the media centre for a number of years, it came to transpire that Robbo again and Maury and the Willard, the hierarchy, decided that maybe, I think the results guys that were doing it weren't going to carry on. And I remember meeting Robbo for a discussion, and he put forward to me the idea, how would I like to sort of take over doing the results for Rally New Zealand? And yeah, the geek that I am, I sort of happy to give it a try. And thank you very much for your vote of confidence for thinking I was worthy of doing that. So we sort of soldiered on with a few external suppliers of systems over the years. 2000, the move, it was getting too much for the local providers like AWA Clarion, or the AWA Computers was actually a system provider who provided software that we ran for a few years. And 2000, it got to the stage where there was this fellow called Peter Silberberg over in the UK who had developed a system that was being accepted pretty much by the WRC. So obviously Maury, in his capacity of sitting at the FIA table and that sort of stuff, could see where things were going, and why constantly get the users that turn up out here something different that they have to get used to working with. Let's look at taking this on, and technology obviously was marching on, where things were becoming a lot more transportable. So they ultimately engaged Peter Silberberg to provide the results system for Rally New Zealand. For several years, he was the main provider. And then I think from memory, it was about 2000. We were at Sky. Yeah, we're up in Sky City, was headquarters for the rally, and the rally decided to run a classic rally behind the main field, but of course it couldn't. Peter Silberberg had no interest in running it as such, or doing the results for it. That wasn't part of his contract. And I'd come across, heard about this fella from Wellington, a fella called Chris Parker, who'd been doing club rallies and the like, and he dates back to, again, there's a guy, Barry Lakeman, I think I recall it was, who had been involved with the early days, the mid-70s, late 70s, early 80s Wellington-based rallies, and he'd got Chris to involved to sort of softwareize, if you like, the battle board. I don't know if you ever saw that, Budgie, in the control room. It was a way of tracking the cars in and out of TCs and controls. So Chris did that, and inherently it became an inevitable path that results would become part of that as well. So Chris developed a very basic recording system for that. And as technology evolved, Chris leapt to the challenge and computerized it more and more and more. And in 2000, we got, having heard about him, I got Chris to come up and do the results for the classic rally. Just basically getting the results in over the Richard Gamble's radio, AREC, and Brian Littlewood's radio networks. Back in those days, lots of paper getting written, in the data entry being done, Chris doing that for the classics. And it's just, our association has really just evolved from there. And as things have transpired, of course, the WRC, the Rally New Zealand WRCs, continue to make use of the international people. And we always had Chris there as the backup system, just in case something did go astray or in any way. So from there it's evolved, and it migrated to the fact where when it came to non-Rally New Zealand events, Chris's system became the standard. And, I sort of talked to people about it. We had sort of, if I remember rightly, I think Grant Blackberry drives an Evo 10 Mitsubishi. So you've had 10 Evos of the Mitsubishi. Well, we've probably got about 15 or 20 evolutions of Chrisport, the way things have transpired, making the best use of new technology and things that have come along. And yeah, we're on the cusp of something else happening in that regard too, probably from what we've been talking about in the last month or so. So from that standpoint, it's just, and we just get on like a house on fire, to be quite honest. He's so approachable, so switched on, and he obviously has such an intricate knowledge of his own system, or the system he's developed, that he can create, sort of make changes to make things suit, just virtually on the fly at times. So it's evolved over the years, and with the advent of 𝙈𝙍𝙁, well, that's created a whole new dimension to things. That's instead of just being data recorders, as we had the information coming from the end of stage timing crews, who would then write a piece of paper that would go down the road to the radio car. The radio guys would transmit it into headquarters. We'd have people in headquarters receiving that, writing it down, putting it on a piece of paper, and giving it to Chris to key into the system. We have what's called the push-pull system, where Chris has the APIs from 𝙈𝙍𝙁 sitting over in their base. And for those that don't realise, they're based in Tasmania, Stephen Sims and his great team. And basically, we're in a position, well, Chrisport is in a position where the system, as soon as the black box in the car registers its telemetry, whether it be going through starting a stage, going past a split point, reaching the end of a stage, and transmitting that data, that's received, processed by the 𝙈𝙍𝙁 system in Tasmania, and Chrisport pulls it in straight into Chrisport. And again, as I mentioned, alluded to radar from MASH, our mission statement, and that's why I have 𝙈𝙍𝙁 sitting on, watching the map on one computer, and my other computer I have the stage that's running. And I'm looking to see that as soon as we see the stage finished data appear on 𝙈𝙍𝙁, I should basically look across and see it appearing in Chrisport in the stage results. So effectively, in all good terminology and all everything working as it should, by the time the rally car reaches the stop control, they should have the time appearing and available to them, so the co-driver can compare their stopwatch to the what's on the 𝙈𝙍𝙁 unit. And away we go.
And make the job of the commentators much easier. I mean, like,
well,
honestly,
that's it for sure. And to be honest, I have to, well, touch wood, a fatal comment probably, but I think the accuracy of all that and the speed of all that tends to be reflected by how few timing inquiries we get from out in the field. The most common of those sort of things is when somebody's performance through a stage has been compromised because there's been a hazard thrown up, which is the sort of thing we see on 𝙈𝙍𝙁. So we know the status of the cars in a stage, which of course the clerk of the course is using from the safety point of view. We're using it. That's what I use when I put the stage notes up on Chrisport, to let people know that so-and-so stopped in a stage. And again, I will just qualify that by saying, I don't do that straight away if it's a high G situation, and if you get more than an 8G, the 𝙈𝙍𝙁 system actually sounds off an audible alarm to attract your attention to the fact that somebody's, basically anything up to probably 2 and 3 Gs, we generally regard as a car's pulled over and stopped because of a puncture or it's broken down, that sort of thing. So it's a park up, for want of a better expression. But anything above that, you tend to be conscious that could be hitting a bank or something. And if the car's, as the co-drivers will know, if it drops below 30 kilometres an hour for a few seconds, then it triggers the hazard. So that changes the status on 𝙈𝙍𝙁, and it alerts us to the fact that something's happened to that car. And so I tend to err on the side of caution. Obviously, the first thing I'm looking for is the yellow icon of the car number changing to green. And that way we know the co-driver or the driver has pushed the OK button on the unit in the car, so we know the humans are OK. At that point, I'm satisfied that there's no risk to life or limb, and I'm then prepared to put the post up saying that car 2 has stopped at X number of K, crew OK. And that's why I always wait to get that information through before I'll put crew OK. And that's why it's so vital for the crew to press the OK button from my point of view, or our point of view, so that we can let the world know that everybody watching and invested interest in that crew they're organising to get a trailer rather than organising to head off to the hospital, or worse yet, sort of stuff, that something's happened to the humans in the cars. So that's really the philosophy we have when it comes to handling that sort of stuff.
Yes, look, it's been an amazing addition to the sport, and as you say, it's evolved over the years. I'm sure it will continue to evolve in the coming years as well. And I think on behalf of the sport, we thank you guys for what you've done. We take it for granted now. It's almost a fait accompli. I mean, I've got to a point, I think, when researching things, I don't bother to look them up. It's just easier to ring you because you get it. You're better than. You're better than Google a lot of the time. But we've probably gone way too long as it is. But I do want to just touch on your competitor aspect.
Yes,
You have
sure.
competed.
I have.
Your story is not just off or out of the car and behind the scenes. You did spend some time co-driving. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. Well, again, I'd be quite, I'm pretty frugal, I guess you'd have to say. I've never really had this burning desire to open a big soak hole and pour money into it. So co-driving was the way I sort of saw myself getting, I guess, being a numbers person sort of stuff, the timing and all that sort of stuff was something that sort of perked my interest more. And I always felt co-drivers were generally a bit underrated and understated when it came to the drivers, sort of were the glory boys, if you like, and quite rightfully so, I guess, because they're the ones on the handlebars. But I go back to my co-driving days were before I got involved with officialdom, because really, I guess to paraphrase, I didn't have the stomach for it. To be quite honest, I would just get terribly car sick. The constant back and forth of your head with the weight of the helmet on board and the smell of the brakes and that sort of stuff, it just sent me over the edge. So, but I had several drivers that put up with me for a wee while. A fella called Terry Riding, actually, I think is a man steward in the Auckland area now. I've lost a bit of touch with Terry over the years. I first started off with him in a little Mini in the CBA Lights rallies. Maybe possibly a contributing factor was a lot of those rallies were at night as well. So possibly that sort of had a bit of a bearing on my ability to withstand the feeling of wanting to, shall we say. But then from there, again, a name that people will definitely remember is I co-drove for Mike Cameron in his Premier Lancer. I don't believe it's the same car, the little Evo that he and Helen and their daughter Kelly pilot nowadays, but it was an earlier version, if you like, of that. And they were based over in Edgecombe, and at those days Mike worked at the dairy factory. So, and I think Premier was the dairy product that was produced there. So it was the Premier Lancer, and we were there in that one. But again, I'm afraid the illness got me. I have won a rally though. I haven't won a rally. My driver won a rally, perhaps in spite of me, and that's Peter Farrell. When he turbocharged the Escort, and we took on the road. I think his regular co-driver Tony Sercombe, the APRC champion for Rod Millen in his own right. They were both in the Air Force, and my association with them goes back to that 1981 actually rally, or 1980, of course, with the Motor Guard rally, where he helped Peter and some of his crew came and helped us with the Parc Fermé job on ripping around the South Island. And so Peter got this Escort, built it up, and ultimately turbocharged it with great success. Beat Possum Bourne in one of our MG Car Club Actron rally sprints in the Riverhead Forest, for those that maybe remember back that far. And Peter had great success with that turbocharged Escort. In fact, a quick little aside was we were about to have our first son, Nigel, back in 1983, and my wife Kerry, heavily pregnant, had gone to bed, and Peter was at our place, and we were talking, and suddenly I hear this pseudo cry from the bedroom. I think things are happening, Chris. Came out of the bedroom, and I told Peter what was happening. I have never seen a rally car go in reverse so fast, as he backed out of the driveway and went back to the base while we got ourselves organised and went over to the North Shore Hospital to ultimately greet our eldest son, who I might add is now 43 years of age. So again, it's our baby is 40 as well, so young Steve. So So we are what we are from that point of view. But so with Peter, it was the Rotorua rally, and I got sick as a dog, but try throwing up at 120 kilometres an hour in a forest stage, mate. And in spite of all that, I was trying to still give the hand, because there was no pace notes as such. It was from the road book. I was trying to gesture and give hand signals. I'm sure Peter got totally confused whether I was telling him I was throwing up yet again, or whether I was actually giving him an instruction to go around the corner. But in spite of all that, he still won the rally. So that was a great experience. Although I do have to say, Tony wasn't available. So back in those days, Budgie, the overalls that we wore were Air Force flying suits.
Oh, wow.
would you believe?
Best Top Gun.
But I don't think Tony's survived after I'd worn it for a rally after what I did to it. So, yeah.
Well,
but
mate,
no,
in the overall scheme of things here, we have absolutely buried the lead there that you won a rally as a co-driver with a pretty renowned driver. So we've saved it to the end. Mate, we could go on forever here, but yeah, I really appreciate your time. I think, as I say, on behalf of the sport, a massive thank you for your huge contribution. I don't think running be what it is in New Zealand without your involvement. So thanks, mate. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you.
No, mate. Well, as I say, I've been doing it for 50 years and I'm still just as keen on it. And my wife still puts up with it as much as she ever has. So, yeah, the beauty of it now is that the age that I am and with the technology, we can do it from home. You know, Chris sits in his house in Levin. I'm up here north of Auckland. And to be quite honest, I haven't actually been in the same room as Chris since 𝙈𝙍𝙁 2024. So, you know, it's just the way things have evolved, and we're doing our bit for not requiring organisers to provide accommodation or the travel that's involved with it. I do miss sort of eyeballing people, and you know, BB's obviously taken over doing the ramp and that sort of stuff. That was always something I did enjoy doing as such, but time marches on, and you know, you cut your cloth to suit, and yeah, you know, it's just the way things work out. But to be able to still contribute, yeah, I love it. You know, the likes of the way things have evolved now, just quickly with having worked my time through with the likes of Brian Stokes over the years, Jeff Argyle, Richard and Sarah Mason, fabulous people, man. Just as you can see behind me, there's some photos there, and you know, just to be associated with them, and now the likes of young Jack Stokes. You know, I've got so much time for his. He just seems to be so mature for the amount of experience he's had. You know, there's the Todd Bordens, Paul Berber, Barge from Wingers, absolute salt of the earth people. Blair Reid, who of course is now runs Subaru or Inchcape now over in Australia. Yourselves, you know, it's just fabulous. And as long as I'm of use to you, and my health holds up, and I'm sure Chris feels the same, we'll be here for you guys and this fabulous sport that we've all grown up with and become an integral part of our lives.
Awesome, mate. We'll have you on the speed dial at Hawke's Bay in a couple of weeks' time. Thanks, everyone. We'll do it again next week when we preview Rally Hawke's Bay. Until then, take care. Thanks, mate.